Where they call Atlanta, Southside shows for a couple dollars, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
This is the Brew Party Podcast, episode number 49, and we are live now, folks, on YouTube, Facebook, and Periscope. You can check us out there with the audio coming out shortly after this tonight, so we have it out in time for the Penn State game tomorrow. I'm joined by a very special guest, another former Illini, former Wright State Raider, head coach, GM of the House of Paign, the University of Illinois alumni team. Mike LaTulip joins the Brew Party Podcast. Mike, thanks so much for being here.
Andy, I appreciate having me on, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So how are you doing? How's everything going? What have you been up to since that incredible run you guys had over at the basketball tournament?
Everything's good, man. We've been, my fiance and I, we live down in Austin, Texas. So, just been enjoying the weather down there. Obviously working. I work for a startup recruiting agency down there in Austin as well. So yeah, man, just living life. And then, outside of that, with the TBT, it's somewhat year round when it comes to recruiting and keeping in touch with the guys and game plan, scheme, all that stuff is, as you're watching college basketball, as you're watching the NBA, there's certain things that you see that maybe you want to implement or certain actions and, maybe certain ways that guys are utilized. So that's kind of what I've been up to, man. So just enjoying life.
Absolutely. That's so good to hear. Staying safe during all these crazy times. So let's talk a little bit about the TBT. So I had Finky on a few months ago, kind of right after you guys were done. So I've known him since high school and actually was on a flag football team way back in the day with Fink. But so he kind of told me part of the story, but I want to hear from you, how you got involved. So TBT reached out to him. He passes the information along, and then you just kind of build this team from scratch. Like, where do you even start with this process?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd be lying if I said that, it wasn't something that I thought about for a long time before it actually happened. So, ironically enough, by the time Fink had reached out to me, I already reached out to a lot of different guys that previous July during the tournament, like before we even knew we were going to have a team or anything. Just to kind of gauge, interest in who would play. And if we did get to the point where we could take the steps to put a team into the tournament, what that looks like. And, how many guys we would have to get outside of the Illini network, if you will. So yeah, that was a big part of it. And then once Finky kind of hit me up and said, Jake Pavorsky, who does a great job with the TBT, he's kind of the director of player personnel. Hey, he wants to chat with somebody who can kind of organize and start this team. And, I felt like I already had a good pulse on who would play and kind of what that would look like. And just as a basketball junkie myself, I mean, you kind of dream of that, like, hey, if I ran a team, kind of what would it look like? Or if I was able to implement an offense, what would it look like or a defense? And so all those things were things that I had thought about. So once it got to that point, to plan it and to recruit for it and to kind of put together our offensive and defensive scheme. I don't want to say it was seamless because a lot went into it, but I was able to have a lot of people, involved. And when I say that, it really does take a village. I mean, there's, former Illinois coaches like Jamal Walker, who helped me out a lot, and James Herring, who's now the director of basketball operations at Dayton. He was my GA at Illinois. So guys that I confide in, it's the one thing when, it's a lot of shit, man. So, so when it comes down to it, me, I've never been in the coaching profession. I like to think that I know what I'm doing, but, you're mistaken if you just kind of think that you can go it alone and think you're going to completely optimize, the talent of the team and the pieces that you have. So, I was able to reach out to a lot of different people that I trust in the industry and get some good feedback and kind of keep in touch with them throughout the whole thing. And even after the games, just kind of, hey, what did we see? It was kind of like a little brain trust, if you will, as we kind of went through the tournament. So, I thought for year one, it was, I thought we had a little bit of success for sure.
A little bit. I think that's it's definitely underselling yourself, man. So that recruiting process, like how hard is that, building the team? You said you were reaching out to guys, gauging interest. I'm sure as far as the Illini guys go, it's pretty easy to get them to buy in. But then you bring in a guy like Mike Dom, who was arguably the best player in the tournament, and Kyle Vanales played a really big role, as well as Billy Garrett Jr. So what was the process like getting those guys involved?
Well, I mean, to be honest, getting the Illini guys, it wasn't like it was, one ask and they were in, because there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, these guys have their own contract situations overseas, and with the pandemic, there was just a lot of uncertainty of, is there going to be an NBA summer league? Is there not? Is there going to be a training camp? Is there going to be NBA workouts? And when is all of that? So when you're planning for the TBT, you got to keep those things in mind, because after year one of doing it, I'm a firm believer that your roster is not done until you take the court, game one. And that's kind of how it went. I mean, Matt Mooney was a guy that we were really looking forward to having on the team, and 48 hours before, the Cleveland Cavaliers pull him out. So, and then Ravante was another guy who was all in, ready to go, and his league started back up in Israel. So there was just a lot. And then even with a guy like Mike Dom, he had a few other teams interested, kind of vying for his services. So you really got to throw the whole, recruiting pitch at them. We were able to put together, I guess, a PDF of how we would utilize these guys. And that way, once we got on the phone with them, we could chat with them, and you're not just like, hey, come play for our team. We could maybe win a few games, because it's the first year. So it's really important just to get good players that are bought in and good guys that want to play together, because, if you can have success in year one, then you at least have results to point to. And that's kind of, as I look back on the experience, one of the cool things where now when we talk to recruits, we can say, hey, this is what we did in year one. And this is what we plan to do in year two. And all the stuff that you're telling them, how you're going to run the offense, how you're going to run the defense, it's not just lip service. Like, they have film that they can go watch and see. So yeah, man, it was a lot of fun. And partly in fact, just because we had really good guys that wanted to play together. And that sounds so trivial, but it really isn't like that on every team that plays in the tournament. You saw it firsthand. You stay at the hotel with every team, in that little bubble. So you see guys that are upset and guys that maybe aren't getting the playing time that they want, or, it kind of runs the gamut. But so that's what I was so thankful for with our team. Like, we didn't have any of that. Like, we didn't have any guys that were upset about not playing or thought they should be getting more shots, but you run into that problem when you have 12 plus guys on your team, like some of those teams did in the tournament. Like, I like to keep our roster at 8 or 9. And then from there, you kind of have your built-in rotation, and you don't have to worry about, hey, it's 11 guys and like there's going to be an odd man out. Is he going to be happy? Like, we just didn't want to worry about that shit when we went into the tournament. There was way too many other things. There was a lot of other stuff to worry about than those types of things, namely guys testing negative for COVID. So it was a whirlwind, but it was a lot of fun.
So one thing that you were able to do really well was like install that offense. I remember Dan Dockich saying on the broadcast that Mike LaTulip is running 90% more offense than half of the million, or running more offense than 90% of the millionaires getting paid to coach in college basketball. And you only had like 6 days of in-person practice. I believe you guys probably had a lot of Zoom meetings. Like, how hard was that to install and make sure everybody got as well as they did in that short period of time?
Yeah, well, partly it's a lot of that I attribute to the IQ of the guys that we had, and it was deliberate. Like, we wanted to make sure that once we got guys on the team, or when we were recruiting, that they fit a certain criteria. Like, are they guys that could pick up on a system, in 6 days time, in person? I think we had 4 days to prepare in person before our first game, but we were on Zoom calls before, and I'm kind of James Herring and I and Cam Liss helped out as well in terms of, hey, we're going to share our screen here. We're going to show you some film. This is kind of what we want it to look like. And then when you have guys that can intuitively kind of pick that up, and then once we get to Columbus, they already have the foundation of what they think it should look like and what we think it should look like. So once we get onto the court, you're obviously installing it, you're walking through it, but you're dealing with professionals, you're dealing with pros. So what I was blown away with, as opposed to dealing with 18, 19-year-old freshmen in college, is you could tell them a play. I'd draw it up at half court. We'd walk through it one time, and that was it, and they got it. And it just sped up that learning curve to where we didn't have to. I didn't have to worry about calling a play during the game. Like I could call it and know that they got it. And that's kind of what you want. You want to take out all those cobwebs and things that you would otherwise worry about on game day with a team that you were practicing with for 4 days. So and then just having basketball players, guys that know the game and don't have to rely on a play being called every time down. And that was what was really good about the guys that we had. They were just they could really be innovative on the offensive end and kind of be able to to pick up on the game as it was going on and not having to be told everything every 2 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there ever a thought of like you pulling like a Jackie Moon and going player coach and having him print up a jersey for you and run the offense yourself?
Funny, it's actually funny you say there was a jersey printed because we just didn't know. I mean, we came to Columbus with 8 guys, so the guys at the TBT had let me know, like, hey, we have a jersey for you. Like, if it gets down to like 6, like if it got down to 6, I probably had to think about playing, which would have been fine. Like I'm in shape. I haven't really stopped working out since I was done playing. But I also was hoping that I could just leave it to the professionals to do that, and they wouldn't have to put me in there. So I was glad that we all ended up testing negative and being able to put 8 guys on the floor, because I thought that was one of the advantages that we had, being able to be nimble like that and not have to worry about, like I said, 11 or 12 guys and how does each guy fit in. And, because once you start getting to that many people, you feel the need to play all of them. And if that's the case, that's just not how teams should be constructed, and it just doesn't work like that. So in that perspective, it worked out in our favor. But so long story short, I'm glad that I didn't have to go out there and suit up.
Yeah. So your first game as a coach, it goes really well. You guys dominate War Tampa pretty much from the start. Like how good did that feel just to get that first W under your belt? I'm sure not just for you, but for the guys as well.
Yeah, I think it reaffirmed everything that we had talked about going into it. Like I thought we were extremely prepared. We watched a lot of film. The guys knew everything about the other team in terms of personnel. So what ended up happening was it gave those guys kind of, okay, this can result to winning a game and winning a game big. But I'll be honest, man. I was in the hotel room before the game, and you just naturally have nerves because a lot went into that moment. 10 months of a lot of work to where it all leads up to a single elimination game. And the way you envision it in your head, you've played it out a million times, and you hope that it's like that, and I was really confident that we could go out there and win that game for sure. And I think once the ball tipped and, we kind of drew up a play right out. I'm like, hey, Dom, just set a ball screen, see how they're guarding it, and we'll go from there. Like, we just want to know how they're guarding Mike Dom first. And they left him wide open for a 3. And I remember turning back to the bench. I'm like, let's do this, man. Let's do this. So that was fun. And then I think, like I said, what it did for the camaraderie and the morale of the team, they started to buy in even more, to trust me a little more, to trust the rest of the guys that we had involved more, to trust each other more. And I think that was on display, in the Carmen's crew game. Those guys just really, in that, I could have told you that morning, like that team believed they could beat anybody. It just happened to be the number 1 seed and the defending champions. But man, it was a lot of fun. It was so much fun. And to be in, that in Bridgestone Arena, and they have all the curtains and stuff, so you don't even notice that there's no fans in the crowd. It's just it was a really, really cool atmosphere, and one that, I don't think they're doing a bubble this year. We'll see if they can even have fans at games, but regardless, it's no matter if you have 0 fans in the stands or it's a packed arena, like that tournament, there's really nothing like it. The intensity is just, it's crazy because it's single elimination.
Yeah. So what would you say your biggest takeaway from your first House of Pain, the basketball tournament experience?
Biggest takeaway is coaching is hard. Like, I think that's the one thing that as I was going through it, like the shit just moves so fast. It's like, and I had never coached before, obviously, but um, when you're trying to handle substitutions and then just trying to see what's going on the floor and how we can combat it, and then during timeouts, do I want to make sure to give them a little bit of time to talk amongst each other, and then I'll come in and either drop a play or just kind of reinforce what our original game plan was. But all that's going on, it's happening so fast, and I felt like by the Red Scare game, it's moving a little bit slower. It's just an experience thing. Like you're in it a little longer, but it's also going to be helpful when we can get people there that like James Herring is a guy that I'd really want to have there with me, so that someone's handling substitutions, and then I don't have to worry about every single thing that's going on. Like it's a reason why when I was at Illinois, Dustin Ford did the substitutions. When I was at Wright State, our assistant coach did the substitutions. So having all of that is it's a lot on your plate. But that's just from my perspective, from the coaching perspective. But from a player's perspective, the big takeaway was that those guys really loved being around each other. And so you think when you're constructing a team, you're like, hey, if we can get guys together again that have that type of mentality where they're bought in no matter the situation, just makes it a lot smoother for everybody. You're not just dealing with assholes or guys that are completely selfish and want to get their rocks off on ESPN. Because I told the guys, I'm like, dude, you guys are going to get enough shine just as a byproduct of what we do on the court and winning. Like you win enough games, people are going to take notice.
Right.
You could lose. That's great. You could score 30 points against Ward Tampa. If you lose and go home, nobody gives a shit. Yeah. So let's keep winning, and then the more we win, the more each of you guys are just getting shine in your own right. So, there was a lot to be learned. I mean, it was a very long process. It was, like I said, it was 10 months, and I think that was the other takeaway, was that a lot of work went into it, and you started to kind of see the fruits of our labor. Once the tournament ended, it was like, man, like I was like in tears. We did like a press conference, and I was like, dude, why am I in tears right now at the TBT? But like, so much went into it. And I saw Malcolm, for example, Malcolm lost his grandmother during the tournament. Andres lost his grandfather during the tournament. Like that wears on guys. And, I thought that it was really cool to see guys rally around them, and those guys, play with their heart on their sleeve. And that's kind of where the emotion, I think, came in for me personally at the end, because not only, how much work went into it, but how much these guys sacrificed to be there. So yeah, it was probably one of the better basketball experiences of my lifetime. That's for sure.
Well, I got to tell you, from a fan's perspective, I just got to say thank you guys. Like, it was incredible just to see all you guys out there and, to back together again, especially for Illini Nation, just the nostalgia factor of that. And then, the fact that Andres missed out on the NCAA tournament. Malcolm Hill is the number 3 all-time scorer in program history. He never got to play in a tournament. Finke being a hometown guy from Champaign. Nana Egu's like, just the fact that what you guys were able to do and come together like that was awesome. And then even better to get an upset over Carmen's crew and pretty much be the hottest new team in the tournament. So you said it's a 10-month process, so I assume you're still working on it right now. Any big plans or new additions for this year that you're allowed to talk about just yet?
It's so funny. Like it's ever evolving. It's ever changing in terms of keeping tabs on guys and, making sure that, that the timing lines up for when they can be at the point where they can make a decision. There's a lot of guys right now, guys that Illini fans would know well, that are interested in playing. And the reason why I can't just say, hey, this guy's 100% committed, is because we just don't know what anything's going to look like from month to month. We don't know when NBA Summer League is. We know the NBA Finals is in July, which is unique because it's usually mid-June. And so when's the TBT going to be? And all those dates we've seen. There's we'll put out the the videos in April and May, and in that moment, those are those guys giving you their commitment because that's they're going off the information that they know. But that could change in a month after that, and or 48 hours before the tournament, like we experienced with Matt Mooney. So
Yeah.
No, it's we have a lot of big plans, but at the on the other side of the coin, there we're really happy that we were able to build the foundation in year one, because that makes it a little less taxing in terms of preparation this year. It's like we already have kind of an offensive scheme, defensive scheme. I'll go back and watch film every now and then. Like, for example, I'll just go to I'll pull up the Celtics in the bubble, and and then I'll kind of just I'll put those up and watch. Hey, what kind of out of timeout plays is Brad Stevens running? What kind of out of timeout plays is Eric Spoelstra running? Because both of them are great X's and O's guys. So and being able to pull those apart and be able to implement that maybe during timeouts and and give these guys a chance to put them in a position to be successful, really. So yeah, man, I think it's going to be another exciting year. And like I said, it means a lot to be able to point to results and point to success, so that when we have these other guys that we're thinking of going after, that we've been in conversation with, we can say, did you watch us last year? Did you like that? Okay, cool. Like, come and be a part of it. So, so from that perspective, it's exciting.
Yeah, so I know that you've said multiple times before that you didn't get into this to get like a coaching job at the college or whatever level. You more just wanted to get these guys together. Is that still the case? Is there any chance we could see a Mike LaTulip led program here soon, or is House of Paign the Mike LaTulip program?
I mean, House of Paign is I say the Mike LaTulip led program, but as I mentioned, there's a lot of people that that helped me out. I mean, yeah, I think I do well in college coaching and or even at the professional level, but that's really not. I'm just really not interested in it. It's a completely different lifestyle and a nomadic one where you just kind of don't know where you're going to be from year to year, and your staff may get fired, and your best opportunities at North Dakota State. Nothing against North Dakota State, but I have a fiance. We're about to get married in May, and you got to think about her job, and you got to think about what's best for your family, and I'm just not one to. I moved a lot growing up. Like my dad, we moved a ton, and I want to be able to give my family a little bit more stability. And with that, I can still get the coaching fix, if you will, every summer in July on ESPN. So like there's really you almost take out all the. I don't say you take out all the bullshit in coaching, because I went through a lot of it this year. Just people coming out of the woodwork and wanting to be a part of it when they really kind of had no business being a part of it, or were kind of in it for the wrong reasons. So you got to stave off people like that too. So there were a lot of things that I didn't foresee having to do, kind of behind the scenes shit that you're just kind of like, man, these are tough conversations that you have to have. And I think it's helped me grow kind of as a person. But also for the other people that are involved, like, it's my job to take that off the players' shoulders. It's my job to take that off, the rest of the people that we have on staff. It's my job to take it off their shoulders. And I'm willing to have those conversations. So there's so much that goes into coaching this team that, I don't feel like there's like part of the void that's not being filled, because TBT does it. So.
Absolutely. I think that you just made a great point. Like, every summer you get to do it, and you're on ESPN, the biggest channel in sports. So also, I mean, shocker that you wouldn't want to live in Fargo, North Dakota over Austin, Texas. So I don't blame you for that one, man. So let's get into your playing days a little bit. So if we go all the way back to high school, when you left Prospect High School, you're the all-time leading scorer. Is that still the case?
Yep.
1484 points. You average 22 a game your senior year, and you come to Illinois as a preferred walk-on. Is that right?
Yep.
So what was your recruiting process like? How did you end up coming to Illinois in that role? Because I'm sure you could have gone a few other places on scholarship.
Yeah. I had a few mid-major offers, probably about 10 mid-major offers to some pretty decent schools. But what ended up happening, and part of this is because I was a very egotistical 18-year-old with a chip on my shoulder, and just kind of naive to to what the college basketball world was. And so what ended up happening was, in high school, I was the guy who, I thought I was the best shooter in the country. And I'd have 9, 10, 11 threes in a game, and didn't think anybody could touch me, to be honest. And when it came to shooting the ball, and keep all in that in mind, probably my junior, senior year of high school, I grew a little bit when I came to Illinois, and but I was probably 5'11", 100 and shoot, I came into Illinois 148 pounds, so probably 5'11", 145, and I'm going to these tournaments, AU tournaments, and playing against these high major guys that are committed to Louisville and Kansas and Colorado, a lot of different schools, and scoring 30, 35, 40 on them. And I think what ends up happening is it skews your perception of where your level is, and where your home is at the next level. So my whole thing was, if I'm killing these guys, like, I need to go play high major somewhere. Like, I want to be able to go play at the highest level. And what ended up happening was, I had a tournament in Milwaukee that, first game, we ended up winning. We played against 6 high major committed guys. We had 38 that game. Followed up that game we played against Wisconsin Playground Elite, which is one of the best AAU teams out of Wisconsin, and 37 on them, 42 the next game, 40 the next game, and that's when things really started to build and things really started to pick up. And I remember one of the games specifically was the game against the 6 high major guys, and I mean, that was the game where I had 38, and I'm telling you, every college coach was there. Like, everyone. Like, Coach K was there for a little bit. Like, there were a lot of coaches that were there. So I remember after that game, and we played a bunch of against a bunch of different guys in that tournament. Christian Wood being another one of them, who's having a hell of a year for the Rockets this year. And so I think I kept thinking, like, oh, I can go play at the high major level. And after that tournament, what ended up happening was I thought the offers were going to pour in, to be honest. And didn't understand why, okay, I get it. I'm 5'11", 145 pounds, but I still don't, but I can play. So, like, why am I not getting the offers that, I think I should be getting? So Toledo reached out to me and was like, hey, we want you to come on a visit. We're not sure if we're going to offer you. So come on a visit. We'll see what happens. St. Mary's, same thing. Loyola, same thing. Boston College wanted me to come out to their elite camp so they could get another look at me. So I ended up going and visiting Boston College, played at their elite camp, come into Coach Donahue's office after the camp, and he was like, hey man, like, we're not going to offer you a scholarship, and honestly, like, we don't even want you as a preferred walk-on. And I was like, why? And he was like, you're too competitive. That's what he said. And I remember in the moment being like, what do you mean too competitive? And it wasn't until I got to Illinois where I realized kind of what he meant. Because there is a pecking order, like there is, and I was just the type of guy where, in order to be good at the game of basketball at my size, I had to think that I was the best player on the floor. Like, you just had to. It was the only way you survived. And with that came, people who thought you're arrogant, you're cocky, or you carry yourself a certain way that was maybe off-putting to some people. And I remember Ryan Peden, who's the assistant coach at Ohio State now, who was one of our assistants at Illinois when I was there. He told me at one point after practice, he gave me kind of along the lines of like, you got to know your place type talk, because I was just kind of the type of guy in practice who would just mix it up and just uber competitive and like wanted to be in the mud and like kind of just try to get into it with some guys just to get the competitiveness going. Like, we struggled with that sometimes when I was at Illinois. And so I felt like the odd man out sometimes, just trying to to get energy going in practice where, I could see from a coach's perspective, it looked disruptive, or it looked like, I was a distraction, if you will. And so, yeah, once I, to backtrack to choosing Illinois, I think the Boston College thing really pissed me off. Like and with that, I was kind of like, I don't care. I'm gonna go to the high major level, and I'm gonna prove everybody wrong. And lo and behold, like a week later, Jay Price called from Illinois because it was still Weber's staff. And I went down on a visit, played an open gym, and I'm like, I can play with these dudes. So went back on another visit a couple weeks later and committed. And, I think my freshman year, I was able to play in games, like meaningful games, at 150 pounds. So my thought process is like, oh, dude, once I put on some weight, get stronger, get in the weight room, I'll be able to, play for a good Big Ten team. And I was playing my freshman year for a team and we were ranked in the top 10 at one point.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I'm like, why leave? Like, I can stay here and carve out a good career for myself. But, just kind of how I was as a person and not being able to separate, I'm the guy that is like, I'm very edgy on the court, competitive. And you have to pick your battles. You have to choose kind of when to, how far is too far. And I think during my career at Illinois, like I took it too far at times. And I think shot myself in the foot when it came to getting back on the court and playing. And the other thing too was, I was 6 foot with like a 6 foot wingspan. So, once guys like Kendrick Nunn show up and these guys, all they need to do is pick up on the system and they're just a more viable option, just with their length and, ability to defend at a high level. And like, I was always in the right spot defensively and, was able to take charges on the ball. And that's what got me on the court most times. But to stay on the court, you have to be able to not just barely keep your head above water. So I realized that, I think my junior year, and that's when I wanted to redshirt. I thought about redshirting my senior year. That's why I did that, because I'm like, man, I just want to play again. Like I don't know what I would have done if I ended my career. I enjoyed my time at Illinois, obviously, loved every minute of it. But I don't know what I would have done if I just called it quits after 4 years and didn't have the chance to go to Wright State and start and play a lot and be able to kind of, get, I guess, scratch that competitive itch that I had for 4 years built up at Illinois. So
what was that like, man? Like redshirting and then being like recruited by other schools, like while you're technically still part of the Illini?
Yeah, it was interesting because, you don't want to send your high school film as a fifth year. I mean, and then I had some decent film from Illinois, but in terms of game film, there just really wasn't much there for you to be like, hey man, offer me a scholarship. Because I think a lot of coaches maybe had hesitancy. Like I was a guy, I was a Division I recruit, had mid-major offers, but I understand as a coach, you're like, okay, he's been sitting on the bench for 4 years. Like, is he worth a damn? So I put together like maybe like an 8-minute highlight reel from practices. It's just kind of what I had to do, and was able to send that out to a lot of different schools. And granted, like I know a lot of coaches and know coaches that know a lot of coaches. So I was able to spread and I was able to get some offers but South Dakota State was one of the first ones to come back and offer me a second time around. They were my first offer in high school, and obviously Coach Scott Nagy was willing to give it another go. And I actually went and visited South Dakota State, while I was redshirting at Illinois. It was the first week of fall practices. And Gross was like, go, man. It's a good opportunity. They're a great program. They go to the tournament almost every year. Go see what it's like. So I went out there and, I still told Coach Nagy and Coach Cooley and those guys, like, hey, I just need till the end of the season. I want to finish this out with the guys. I don't want to be committed elsewhere while I'm still at Illinois. So by the time I waited too long, and they left South Dakota State and went to Wright State. So I remember texting Coach Nagy and being like, hey, man, congrats on the new gig. And I kind of thought that the opportunity to play for them was just out the window, and Coach Cooley, their assistant, hits me up a couple of weeks later and is like, hey, we actually think we have a really good opportunity for you here. And that's when I made the decision. So I had the Wright State visit scheduled, and then I had Central Florida scheduled for the next week. And, I ended up just going to Wright State and falling in love with it. I love that staff, and their facilities are great for a mid-major school. And so it was a no-brainer to pull the trigger and go play for those guys. And it couldn't have worked out any better, to be honest. But there's a learning curve. You get there as a fifth-year senior, but you're also kind of like a freshman.
Right.
You haven't played that, those types of meaningful, 20+ minutes in a game, in your college career. So people think you have it figured out. So a lot of it's just on your own, just, reminding yourself that you are a good player and that you do belong at this level. And there were obviously some peaks and valleys, in my time at Wright State, but for the most part, I wouldn't have traded that opportunity for the world.
Yeah. So what is that transition like? Like, how difficult is that, like learning a new system coming from the one you were playing in at Illinois?
Yeah. I mean, I think the reason why I think I was at somewhat of an advantage was, I committed to Bruce Weber, and then John Gross got hired. And when I got to campus at Illinois, it was clean slate for everybody. It wasn't like there was these, you're going to Bill Self's program and you have these guys who've been in the system for 3 years, and you're competing against guys that have this down like the back of their hand. For me, that was kind of what even the playing field at Illinois for me to be honest, to play my freshman year like I did, was because of that. Was because I could get up to speed quickly. And same thing at Wright State. It was Coach Nagy's first year, and it was brand new for everybody. So it gave me an advantage to be able to come in there and know that, hey, if I value these things when I go out there for practice, I'll be in a good position to play a lot of minutes and help this team win a lot of games. So from that perspective, it was good. It was good for me, but it was also good from the perspective of I had been through it before, so I was able to teach the young guys and kind of be able to instill that in them. And that was kind of the role that I took, at Wright State, was making sure the young guys are good, being a good teammate, and just, doing whatever I could to help that team win games.
Yeah, absolutely. So we jump back to playing for John Gross. What was it like playing for Coach Gross? Did you have any, like, a favorite thing he used to say in practice or in the huddle, or something that, like, really sticks out to you?
I mean, he was a man of a lot of phrases. He was a man of a lot of energy, is what he was. I think anybody that watches him on the sideline or listens to a press conference, there's one thing that man doesn't lack. It's energy. And, I thought for the most part, throughout our career, he was a guy that, you had to bring it every time you came into the gym. And you had to bring that energy, and he held us to a high standard when it came to that. And it was funny. I think one story that I always like to tell about, Coach Gross is, he always had like this kind of metaphorical way, and he was always really great with phrases, and throughout different parts of the season, he would kind of have like a mantra, for different times, or kind of those dog days of January where, you're kind of just, it's kind of still winter break, and you don't want guys to get too caught up in the monotony of it. He was a guy that, I always like to say this about him. When we did Navy SEALs training, he was in it with us. Like, he was doing it too. And I thought that said a lot about him as a coach, just to have a guy that, wasn't just like, hey, go do this hard shit and, I'll watch you do it and coach you along. Like, he was in it. And a lot of the coaches were in it as well. So you got to kind of go through it together. And yeah, I thought towards the end of his tenure there, it was, I know it was partly bad luck. A lot of injuries my senior year, just with Kendrick getting injured, and, Mike Thorne was getting injured, Jay Tate was out for a little bit. I mean, Tracy was obviously 2 years in a row. So, from that perspective, didn't really help, but I think he landed in a really great spot, at Akron, and obviously Coach Underwood's doing a hell of a job at Illinois right now too.
Absolutely. So if we talk about your freshman year just real quick again, so you guys make the tournament. You mentioned you were in the top 10. You get there, you're playing with guys like Brandon Paul, DJ Richardson, Ray Rice, Tyler Griffey. What do you remember most about that year?
It was insane. Like it was honestly, it was almost a shame that it was my freshman year, because I think it set me up to have different, like a high expectation for college basketball. I'm like, oh, cool. We just go to Gonzaga and beat them by double digits on the road and win the Maui and go to the tournament and beat the number one team at the buzzer. And, I think we had 4 buzzer beaters that year. We have a buzzer beater in the Big Ten tournament. And just a lot of it was, you're just kind of deer in the headlights as a freshman. I was the only freshman. So I'm just kind of looking around like, is this shit normal? And I think as I went out through my career and as I watched more and more college basketball, it isn't normal. That doesn't just happen. People don't just go into Gonzaga and win by double digits, especially not today. And even that year, they were number 1 seed. So we were able to have a lot of really, really cool moments from that year. Maui being one of them. Brandon was fantastic. That whole tournament and really that whole year. He played at an NBA type level and was able to propel us to that win at Gonzaga and through Maui. And man, I could go on and on about that freshman year. And then even just going back to the tournament, you go to you're able to not only be a 7 seed and make it to the tournament, but you're advancing in the tournament and you're beating a Colorado team that had Spencer Dinwiddie and had Andre Roberson and these guys that have had good NBA careers. And we're able to beat them, and then we go play a Miami team who, we're one out of bounds call away from probably going to a Sweet 16 and playing a Marquette team that I think that we were pretty evenly matched with, and would have a chance at that point to go to Elite Eight. And then at that point, it's the tournament, like anything can happen. So, we almost pictured ourselves being like what Michigan was that year. I mean, they were the 5 seed in the Big Ten and made it all the way to the national championship. So, it just goes to show you that's just another reminder for people this year. Obviously you want to put yourself in a good position in the Big Ten conference and, the whatever seed you end up getting in the NCAA tournament. But at the end of the day, like you still got to play the games, and no matter what seed you are, it doesn't change, how you should play or whether or not you can or cannot advance. So all that stuff that I think Illini fans should understand is, as they lose 2 in a row, and just kind of to level set expectations. But you're right. I mean, my freshman year was something I'll never forget. It's almost like I had a whole college career worth of memories from that year. So yeah, man, I reflect on that year, fondly from time to time.
Yeah. I'm still haunted by that bogus ass fucking out of bounds call, dude. That was terrible. Absolutely terrible. And I guess is the silver lining that they can now review that under 2 minutes.
The Illini rule. It's the Illini rule.
It definitely is the Illini rule.
It was unbelievable. I didn't, it was as clear as day from where we were where I was sitting on the baseline, at least, right on the baseline. But those types of calls are I say game-changing calls, but it's the same thing. Like, you got to credit Miami because they had to make free throws at the end, and they made them all. They were 8 for 8. So it's you don't want it to have to come down to one call. But I do think that if DJ Richardson doesn't end up airballing that shot by 1.5 feet, I like our chances to be able to pull that out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm always curious. So, like, you're a guy, preferred walk-on, so you're on the bench. Like, what's your role like in practice? You said you were always very competitive. You wanted to get into it. You wanted to be in the mud. Like, were you like running the scout team? So were you like helping the guys get looks at what they might potentially be seeing?
Yeah, I was scout team. It was funny. We didn't have a scout team my freshman year, which is pretty crazy to say. We would have our managers wear football pads and basically mimic what the other team was doing. And then my sophomore year, we had so many guys sitting out. Like, Darius Paul was sitting out, Aaron Cosby, Ahmad Starks. I wasn't playing a ton of minutes. We had Mav was kind of back and forth. Austin Colbert was back and forth. So we had a pretty damn good scout team. And so, yeah, that was my role. Being, I was typically either whoever the other teams, like, shooter or point guard was, and that was kind of how I did that role. And what ends up happening is you start playing against the starters every single day, and you develop like this animosity for lack of a better word. I mean, we would play, and not oftentimes, but it was pretty split. I mean, we'd beat those guys a fair amount, and obviously we're talking shit, and you try to walk that, walk a fine line there in terms of, all right, we can talk some shit, but let's not completely demoralize our starters or get them so distracted that they're not paying attention to the actions that they should be watching during the game. So I'd say I probably struggled with that. I probably did a little too much talking and probably did a little too much, us versus the world type stuff. But it was fun, man. And then even once we got some other staff members like Walter Offit, who played for Coach Gross at Ohio, and he was still a hell of a player when he was a GA.
Yeah.
So by the time my senior year rolled around, like me and him were just like we're like Lillard and McCollum in the backcourt. It was hilarious. Like we would just, and that was like a lot of my film that I would show. A lot of these coaches for my 5th year was like, this is just me and scout team, I guess. So it was fun as hell, man. But obviously it wears on you because you want to be the guy on the other side. And I at times I would flip back and forth depending on if I had cracked the rotation or not. But, that starts to build over the years where you're pretty sick and tired of being on the scout team. So once I got to Wright State, I was always with the starters. So it was night and day from Illinois.
Did you have like a favorite guy to go up against in practice? Like somebody that you would talk shit with more than others?
Ray. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And the thing with Ravante was he was so much fun to go against, not only just because he's such a good player, and but that gets him going, like him being able to talk, and I knew that, hey, if I can try to get under his skin, it ends up kind of making him better, and it makes him dial in even more. And we'd have times where Ray would just murder us single-handedly, and Malcolm was the same way. They just both would get into these zones, and at that point you just kind of put your hand up and hope that the shot misses. But Ray was just so physically imposing at times that he would always get pissed off when I would take a lot of charges on the ball, because what I would do is I'd slide in front of him and he would just do the rest and just lower his shoulder into me, and he's like, oh, it's bullshit, he's little as hell, and so that was always fun. And I'm popping up like yeah, like clapping in his face and stuff, and so all that's fun. And then obviously after practice it's it's water under the bridge, but being in the heat of the moment like that, it's I love that stuff. And I know Ray's the same. Ray's the same. He loves when it's ramped up. He loves when there's the shit talking, and so it was fun to go back and forth with him.
Absolutely. So we actually have a comment here. So my buddy Grant Baker is GA over at Western in Macomb, and he said, I worked with Walt for a year at Ball State. He's a complete psycho during manager games.
Complete psycho. Complete psycho in a good way. He's just, you won't find many, and that's why him and I were just kind of like fire and fire, because we're both, I'd probably qualify myself as a psycho when I play on the court too. And him and I together was just a nightmare, just in terms of we were just very nuclear when if things weren't going well, we were both flying off the handle. But he was a guy that I think was very instrumental in being able to instill toughness in a lot of those guys that were starting and going against the scout team. Because I mean, Walt, if you don't dive on the ball, Walt's taking out your legs. Right. And Gross loved it. Gross, I really do believe that if Walter Offit injured one of our guys diving on a loose ball, that Gross would probably applaud it, because he loved Walt. And he's a guy that I'd watch him in manager games. I'd watch him go off for 40 in those manager games, and talk shit as he was doing it, to these guys that hadn't played basketball since high school. So it was that was always fun. I try to carve out time to go watch the managers and, see Walt just, go absolutely bonkers on those guys.
That's awesome, man. So if you had to sum up your collegiate basketball career in one word, what would you say?
I guess it was trying. Like, it was a very trying time because, as much as I enjoyed playing and going into practice every day, and I didn't have the luxury of, I'm 6'9", I'll just show up to practice, and at the end of the day, I'm 6'9", and I'll kind of run around, and I'll be athletic enough to. That's funny. And I'll be athletic enough to overcompensate for maybe not playing as hard. Like, I didn't have that luxury. So every practice was, balls to the walls, if you will. And I think by the end of it, and it was the same thing at Wright State. So by the time it was over, I was back and forth thinking about, do I want to go play professionally or do I want to just be done with it? And I think I was just done. Like, I was burnt out. It was 5 years of just absolutely, giving everything that I had, but in the same token, it was a very rewarding experience because I learned a lot about myself and things that maybe were just overshadowed from a characteristic standpoint, that by the time I was 23 years old, I said, man, you got to figure this stuff out, like in the real world. Or else people aren't going to want to be around you, or aren't going to want to work with you. So there's certain things in basketball that help your basketball game, but in your real life can be a detriment. So I had to just kind of completely, compartmentalize that when I was done, because there were a lot of lingering effects from being that type of guy when you stepped on a basketball floor, that when you're done with basketball, like, you can't be that guy in just like your 9-to-5 job, or, it's just going to be, it's not going to be good for anyone involved. So that was the thing. I mean, competitiveness is great, but being able to channel it and use it in the right way is something that I think I learned over the years, that I think my coaches would be happy to know that I learned. Because sometimes during my college career, I probably wasn't the easiest guy to coach, I'd say.
I got you, man. Well, I mean, it's obvious how much you grew over your career, and now you're doing that in coaching and killing it in your first try. Here's the taking the championship this year in TBT. So quickly, I want to get your thoughts, like, just kind of on the Illini this season, and quickly preview the game, what you think we should expect to see against Penn State. So they're 9-5 on the year, number 22 in the polls. They've lost 2 straight to Maryland and Ohio State. The Maryland game probably shouldn't have lost. I mean, Ohio State, I guess you could say they probably shouldn't have lost that either, but they're a ranked team and they're playing really good basketball as well. What's kind of been your thoughts on what we've seen from the Illini so far this year?
Well, I mean, my thought the entire year was that, and I think I tweeted it the other day, like, this team is not going to be a finished product by January. It's just not. Like, and even if they were, like, you got to think about the Baylors and the Gonzagas of the world. Let's take Baylor, for example. When we played Baylor, we just weren't in a position yet to be able to win that game. Like, there was still growth that team needed to do, or that this Illini team needed to do in order to be able to compete for 40 minutes with a team like that. Now, Baylor, on the other hand, they're a team that, right now in January, they're probably pretty similar to how they were in November, because they've already kind of reached that ceiling, and they know who they are and they have an identity. So understanding that the Illini are still discovering that, and part of that is daunting and part of that is encouraging, because that it's really only up from here. And I say that like they're a sub 500 team. I mean, they're whatever they are, 5-3 in the Big Ten, and still in the top 4 in the Big Ten in the standings, and they're a team that's going to continue to get better as this season goes on. What I do think they could do, it's amazing as you look at their team. Last year, they had the toughness, but like the analytics didn't favor them. Like, they didn't shoot the ball well. They weren't like a potent offense. They had a good defense. And now this year, the analytics love them. Like, They're almost top 10 in Ken Palm. You know, the NCAA kind of net rankings that they do, they're still top 10 in that. So the numbers and the analytics love this team, and you would rather have that than the team that's like, hey, we give it our all, but like we just aren't good basketball players. And the encouraging part as you look at this season and as they continue to go is they're going to put all that together. And when they do, you don't have many teams in college basketball who are going to play as tough as a Brad Underwood coach team plays and is as high analytically. You know, they are a top 10 offense in the country right now. They're a top 30 defense in the country right now. You know, they're right there in offensive rebounding. And those are the three things that when you look back at every national champion, when you look back at every Final Four, team over the last 20 years, they are potent in 1, 2, or 3 of those categories: offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency, and offensive rebounding. And the Illini are top 10, top 30, and top 30 in all of them. So there's a lot to be hopeful about. The thing that I'm worried about is just this off-kiltered schedule of not getting that Nebraska game, and then you don't get that Michigan State game this weekend now.
Right.
You obviously play Penn State here in the next game, and then it's a 9-day layoff until Iowa. So if they can find another game in between there to schedule, against just it doesn't have to be like a 300 plus net opponent. It can be somebody that you feel is, hey, this is someone that's going to test us and help us prepare us for a team like Iowa, who right now I don't think there's nobody playing better basketball in the Big Ten than Iowa. They've been consistent. They obviously have a potent offense. It's their defense they need to work on, but yeah, I'm really excited for this Illinois team, and that's not me just saying that because I have a degree from Illinois and played for the team. I was very critical of them last year. I was very critical of them, the previous 3 years. Like I was, and now, just to remain consistent, I'll tell you what I think. And this is what I think with these guys is they're going to hit that ceiling in March or February, mid-February. And that's what you want out of a team, is a team that's going to get better throughout the season. And I don't know. It's amazing when you ask an Illini fan, it's like, hey, would you rather be, 12, whatever it is, 14-0 right now, and then just completely melt down in February and March, or be 9-5 right now with a lot to build on, and be able to continue to progress with these freshmen and guys that are playing big minutes and still trying to find your identity? Like, are we kind of a grinded out team, or are we kind of an up and down like track meet team? Like, what are we? If it was me, I would rather than be that grinded out team, because then you can rely even more on Kofi in those times. And the guy's shooting like 85% over the last 4 games. And so they need to find ways to utilize him more. But at the same time, you have an All-American, you have Io, you have these exciting freshmen and these, Trent and DeMonte are going to be consistent. So, by no means is this a situation where the sky is falling or, they're not living up to expectations. They have a high ceiling that they haven't reached yet. But with that being said, it's on them to reach it.
Absolutely. Have you ever played with a guy like DeMonte Williams that has improved their shooting as much as he has throughout his career?
You'd probably be pretty hard pressed to find a guy in all of college basketball who has done that to the level that DeMonte has done that, because you need a few things to happen. Number one, you need to shoot it poorly enough to start to where people just stop guarding you. But two, the fork in the road there is you would think that once people stop guarding you, it's more open looks, percentages go up. And that's not always the case. For a lot of guys, that can get in your head when you're not guarded, because you have a little more time to get the shot off, and maybe you're taking a little more time. And I think what happens is when you see that the defense clearly doesn't give a shit about you in terms of being a threat around the arc, you start to think that about yourself. You're like, oh man, and just you need confidence as a shooter and to know when you shoot it, the ball's going in. And the thing that DeMonte has done, and you noticed it, if you look at his reps and the way he shot the ball, over the over the last couple years. It was really towards the middle to the end of last year where he started just being in rhythm and shooting fluid because he was rushing shots, and that was what was leading to lower percentages in the beginning of his career. And now he's taking his time, and not only taking his time, he's taking good shots. But the reason he's been able to have so many good open looks in good spots on the floor is because you have Io and Andre Curbelo who can attack and create rotations so that when the ball's getting sprayed around the arc, it gets to him in more of a natural movement, and he can just rise up and shoot it. So I think that's kind of what's contributing to it. Do I think he's going to be a 60% three-point shooter to finish the year? No, because I'm pretty sure that would break the all-time NCAA record. He might, but you have to understand that they're shooting, I think, still over 40% from three for the year. I think they're 39% in Big Ten play. I'm not sure that they're a 40% three-point shooting team. I think maybe one team did that last year. So if you're not going to be that, and you're going to be a 36, 37% three-point shooting team, you better pick it up in other areas, because the three ball is not going to save you every single night.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you have any thoughts on like the 4-guard lineup? Do you think it causes any disadvantages for them defensively? Like, I know they've had trouble guarding guys that may have length on the wing that could kind of fill it up. I know Ron Harper Jr. has hurt us, and they were actually able to do a really good job on Both Gotch. I don't know if I said that right, from Minnesota, but do you see that as a problem going forward?
Well, typically when you look at a 4-guard lineup, you want to err on the side of, hey, if we're going to have 4 guards, we need to have speed. Because when you have speed, then if they do start a 4-man that's more of a traditional 4, he can't hide. He has to guard. And I think, obviously you don't have like a ton of speed with DeMonte, but, with what he does, lack in speed, he makes up for in all the intangibles and obviously being able to shoot the ball at a high level. But yeah, I think Underwood's kind of been able to tinker with that a little bit. It seems like he's gone to those kind of the Twin Towers, I guess, a couple more times.
Yeah.
In the last few games with Georgie being in there. But that's the thing; it's a give and a take. If you put Georgie in there and you take DeMonte out, now you're taking a step back, shooting the ball. And if people where Illinois is really going to take a step forward, DeMonte's still being left open a little bit, and if people can really start to honor his 3-point shot, that's going to open up the court even more for a guy like Io and a guy like Andre Curbelo, to be able to knife through the lane and not only just be able to finish at the rim, but make those dump off passes to Kofi and Georgie. So yeah, I think it's hurt them at times because, that lineup is suited to go against other 4-guard lineups, but I'm not sure it's suited to go against, a big man or a 4-man that can stretch the floor like Ben Vanderplas from Ohio.
Oh yeah.
And Ron Harper Jr., like you mentioned. And that's tough for DeMonte, to be able to have to give up 6 inches, 5 inches. It's asking a lot of him. So I think the more that it's so funny because you watch EJ Liddell and you're like, shit, wouldn't he be a good guy to have at the 4? With this, I mean, this team would be a no-brainer national champion if you had that type of lineup. Because it takes the load off of DeMonte there, and you can have some length go guard the 4 and still have some speed and some outside shooting, and a guy that can finish around the rim. So with all that being said, they have the pieces to be a Final Four team.
Yeah,
in my opinion, it's just a matter of them putting it all together and finding that identity, and that's only going to come with more games. It's a shame that some of these are getting postponed because. These postponed games are just another game for them to try to figure out things about themselves.
Absolutely. So let's do a quick Penn State game preview, and then I'll get you out of here. So what are your keys to an Illini victory against Penn State? Obviously, we've faced them once before this year. They beat them, by 17, I think. They did have another one of those slow starts to start that game, which has kind of been a problem, which I guess I should get your thoughts on that too. Like if you have any thoughts on like why that's happening so often, but keys to the game for Penn State.
Well, to address the poor starts, it's going to kind of lead me into my Penn State analysis, I guess. But you got to realize, and this is it's amazing that, you know, as a fan, you sit there and watch, you're like, wow, every game feels like we're getting off to a poor start. You got to understand that Illinois is a team that everybody has circled on their calendar. And what ends up happening is, just like anything, you know, the excitement to play against a team, you know, the confidence that you have going into a game to play against a really good team, all of that is going to be on display at its highest peak in the first 5 minutes of the game, at its highest peak in the first 10 minutes of the game. So that's why you see these great starts. And if you watch anyone who's a really good team, if you watch the Golden State Warriors over the years, I watched hundreds of their games. They rarely got off to a great start because a lot of these teams were gearing up to play them, and they're willing to throw that first punch. And it's human nature. Like it's Illinois has to be a team that they might not always get up. That's not how basketball works. Like, you don't, just because you're the better team doesn't mean that you're automatically spotted 10 points to start the game. But the great teams, you know, can go out and play for 40 minutes. Because think about the flip side of it. If you're a Penn State fan, aren't you sitting there thinking, well, we got up 19-3 against Illinois, like we should be a good team? Like, it doesn't work like that. The good teams are typically the ones that may face a deficit to start, and what makes them good is the fact that they can come back and win the game, because over 40 minutes we're going to do enough things that will beat you, you know, and that will put you at a disadvantage. So when it comes to Penn State, there's a couple things that I'm looking at. Kofi was great against Penn State. Io played extremely well against Penn State. Jacob Grandison damn near saved the game against Penn State. But the one thing that this team has to understand, and it was something, obviously there was a little bit of chippiness against Ohio State, and there was chippiness at the end of the Penn State game, if you remember, with Io getting ejected. And what you can't do is play right into their hands, you know, to start the game. Like, you can't have guys getting technicals. You can't have guys not focusing on the game plan and how they're going to beat Penn State. You know, so that's something that I'm looking at. But I'm also looking at, hey, that Penn State game, they scored 90 plus points, 98, I think it was. It was like 98, 81 or whatever it was. Yeah, you can't keep playing games like that. You've seen when they beat Indiana, when they beat Purdue, like it's kind of, it's reminiscent of last year where they grind you up and they keep the game in the 60s. And, you know, but if you're going to do that, you have to be a low error type team. You know, it's the reason why Wisconsin plays a lot of games in the 60s. But the reason why they win the games is because they don't turn the ball over and they shoot the ball well from the outside. So right now, Illinois does shoot the ball well from the outside, and what they're struggling with is taking care of the ball. So if they can shore that up and get back to kind of what their identity is, which I think just should be, you know, hey, let's muck it up, let's get it into Kofi, and, you know, but most importantly, let's not be reliant on that. Let's play basketball, but let's be tough. Let's get stops, and if this game's in the 60s, so be it. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter how you win. It doesn't matter how aesthetically pleasing it is. Just get the damn win, however you can get it.
Absolutely, man. So that's all I have for you, really. Actually, what was your favorite campus bar when you were at U of I?
Oh, shit. I mean, it depends what kind of night you wanted to have, right?
Yeah, right, absolutely.
I think, I guess to break it down, I mean, like, if I just wanted to lose my mind, I would go to Lion typically. Yeah. Like, if you just want your eardrums to bleed and you know, things along those lines, like, I'd go to Lion. If I wanted more of like a chill night, hey, let's just go out, I'd go to Joe's. You know, but if it was like or if I just wanted no cell service and to ruin my shoes, I'd go to Cam's.
Yeah.
You know, but Cam's was always kind of like a wild card night. Like, it could be any type of night going to Cam's. I haven't been to the new one.
I haven't either.
Put up yet. Obviously, like, no one's had a chance to really go to that, but yeah, it all depended. I will say I was a big Lion guy. I loved Red Lion. But even as I go back as an alumni, like, downtown is awesome.
Oh,
like,
dude.
It's gotten pretty damn cool, dude. Just with like Barrel House and a lot of those different bars down there, it's grown so much from just like, hey, yeah, the Esquire is downtown. You know, like, there's a lot more bars that that you could go to. There's much more of a nightlife in downtown Champaign to where like when you're an alumni, you don't have to feel like, yeah, I'm tired of being in Red Lion with some freshmen when I'm, 30 years old or whatever, whatever some of these alumni are. Like I get it, go there for nostalgia, pop in, pop out, but by no means do I want to be spending my entire night at a Red Lion or any of those bars.
No, man, I'm not 19 anymore, but that was a great answer you had. What the tiering. So I'm sure like going out as an Illinois athlete has to be like fucking insane. You just can walk in whenever you want. You have people all over. You're like, oh my god, you play basketball.
I was surprised how many people. I blended in with probably every other frat guy on the campus, so I was surprised how many people noticed who I was. But partly, I mean, there were times where we never had to really like pay cover or like do any of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Typically I had to make damn sure that I was with Nana or with some of these guys because I'm not the type of guy to walk up to a doorman and just be like, dude, come on. Like, I played 2 minutes the other night against Michigan State. Like, let me in. Like it was more just like, we'd go out as a group and then I would be in the group. And then once you're in there, like people recognize you. But funny story, when we beat Indiana my freshman year, I believe it was February 7th, my freshman year, first time I ever drank.
Really?
That night. Yeah.
Nice. It was like a snowstorm that day too. I remember that. I will never forget that day. That Tyler Griffey layup, and then a few months later, I was in high school. I worked at Custard Cup. If you ever been there, Jarlings, of course. And Tyler Griffey came in, and I was like, dude, I almost cried when you hit that layup. He like signed an autograph for me. Actually, speaking of Tyler Griffey, I'm sorry, this is for real. My last question. Are you still good at the trick shots? You guys dropped a legendary trick shot video when you were in college.
Dude, that trick shot video, honestly, kudos to Patham, the guy that put it together. But when we saw the finished product, he sent it over to me, and I was like, dude, do we have to have 7 different angles? Like, I was totally cool with that video being like, 3 minutes long and just one cut, and it was very elaborate. But yeah, man, I bring out, it was funny, the probably most infamous trick shot that I have, I didn't bring out for that video, but it's like the full court shot that I've hit a bunch of times. And yeah, no, I still have it. It's still in my bag. It's one of those things when you're done playing that shooting just like, it's like riding a bike, man. Like it never really leaves you. Like you've done enough reps in your life where you can step away for like a year and come back in a gym and, make 30 in a row or 40 in a row. And, that's what's been cool about it. That's what I was worried about when I was done playing, actually. I was like, shit, dude, am I gonna be able to shoot like when I'm done? I almost wanted to play professionally just to keep that going. But I worked out all the time with the Wright State guys. When I was done, I was still living in Dayton. So I'd go into the gym with them all the time and just, work out, go through shooting workouts and just trying to stay fresh in case I wanted to lace the shoes back up for for a professional career.
Do you still play pickup now at all?
It's tough in Austin. I played a lot more in Dayton, but in Austin, when we do play pickup, we go over to Westlake High School, which is actually the high school that Drew Brees and Nick Foles went to. It's funny, like right outside, you see like around their football fields like a fence that has like just a bunch of Drew Brees and Nick Foles. Nick Foles it's probably a trigger for you Bears fans.
BDN, man.
Yeah. So yeah, we try to get him in. I played in my first rec league right before COVID happened, and I just was not prepared for that. I'm still just way too competitive, and I don't think the guys that I played with enjoyed playing with me because I was just like, what the hell are you doing? Like, like if somebody turned it over, I was getting all pissed, and I need to just check myself at the door and be like, you know what, man, try your best to go out there and have fun, because it's really hard for me when I get like in the game and when I get in the arena. It's almost impossible to like dissociate.
Yeah.
how I was before and what I'd like to be as a retired player.
Yeah, that's like me when we go down to the six pack and get drunk and try to play volleyball. We're just way too into it, man.
Dude, the six pack, man. Well, did you live in the six pack?
No. So I didn't. But I would meet my friends down there. We'd go during the summer or just whenever. In this go fuck around in the sand. I would call myself the closer because I wouldn't try until we were about to win and try to. I'm like 6'2", 6'3", that range. So I would just be the guy that would try to jump up in the sand, get my fat ass off the air. This is for
you're talking about the volleyball courts by
the six pack, yeah. By the basketball courts,
yeah, right, kind of like almost looking at Memorial Stadium.
Yeah, like right across the street.
Yeah, that's where we rolled in the sand for Navy SEALs training. We dove into the water first, got all wet, and then had to roll in sand and have sand up our ass for the entire workout, which was part of it. It's just about being uncomfortable. So glad to hear we were in the same sand.
Absolutely, toughness and togetherness, man. That's
right.
That's what it's all about. What's your favorite Michael Finke hairdo? It's got to be the flow, right?
I hate the bun, man. I'll be honest. He knows that. He knows I'm not a fan of the bun. I actually, when he went to GCU and went straight like shaved head, big fan. Fan. I told him that. I'm like, dude, keep that, man. I thought he killed it with that. I'm not a man bun guy. I'm not even saying like, get off my porch, old fashioned type thing. Like I just think he looks better without the man bun.
Old man yells at cloud.
I think it's back too. I think he has it.
It is. Yeah, he's in the Netherlands. Shout out to Mike. He's such a good guy. One of my favorite guests I've had on the podcast. But so that's really all I have for you, man. I'm sorry if this went too long, but this was awesome.
Dude, all good, man. I love chopping it up.
I'm so excited that you were able to come join me and talk about your career, talk about House of Paign. I'm looking forward to this next year. You guys getting some more W's under the belt. Like I said, bringing home the championship. Are you still doing the full 94 pod or no? You taking a break from that?
It's tough, man. I've been going on a lot of different shows lately. So I have a job and then, going on a lot of different podcasts and going on radio. And, if I were to do my podcast, like typically I'd do them after games and then I'm editing till 2:30 in the morning. And it was a lot, man. And it was fun. Like it was a good experience. And I'm still tinkering with whether or not I'm gonna keep it going. I'd say there's a 90% chance that I've hung up the microphone. I guess being on that side of the microphone, but yeah, man, no, it was fun. I enjoyed it, but we'll see. Maybe we'll rehash it sometime in the future.
Absolutely, man. Well, I really take to heart what you just said about editing being up till 2:30. It definitely fucking sucks. But if you're doing all those guest appearances, man, and staying busy, and I'm sure you got stuff with your day job and stuff like that and House of Paign. But Mike, let's close this out. Ladies and gentlemen, the head coach, the GM of House of Paign, the best new team in the basketball tournament, former Illini, former Wright State Raider, Mike LaTulip, the GOAT of Prospect High School, all-time leading scorer. We'll give you that title. Mike, thank you so much for being here. This has been episode number 49 of the Brew Party Podcast. Video available now on our YouTube, our Facebook, and our Twitter. And then the audio will be out on all podcast platforms, hopefully by 2:30, hopefully by midnight. So we'll see in time for the Penn State game tomorrow. Mike, thanks again. Take it easy.
All right, man. Appreciate it, Andy.